Greetings, fellow warriors, and happy Musou May. I have been bestowed the opportunity to deliver One Musou Moment, a trend created by fellow content creator Koei Kollection. He recently kicked off this trend with his Conquer is Born video, where he eclipses what I believe to be one of the most thrilling and captivating scenarios in all of Samurai Warriors, the rise of Nobunaga Oda, and what his legacy in Samurai Warriors illuminates for the series as a whole. I won't spoil the video, but if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it. The idea behind this trend is to bring light to one moment that resonates with fans and creators alike. There's no guidelines or requirements in how to make this video, just an opportunity for us to share moments across a series of games that we all enjoy, and also to bring more attention to Musou May in general. A trend set back years ago by Gildart, another content creator with a keen emphasis on Musou-style games. As for me, being a fellow Warriors fan who grew up with these titles, there's so many moments in Musou games that I reflect on and think how well they've aged. I try to bring those moments to light in my videos, but I hardly hone into details or key elements and how those moments cultivated my affinity for Warriors titles. The Musou moment I want to shed light on today is a specific moment in the Dynasty Warriors series that covers a monumental turning point during the Three Kingdoms era. It doesn't specify a specific game per se, but encapsulates a moment that I believe is the catalyst to a sequence of events that dictate the motives, fallout, and fate of a nation when emotion surpasses logic. How blind power can corrupt the mind in making sound decisions as a leader. In this Musou moment, we will highlight the fallout of Shu and Wu in the Jing Province after the slaying of Guan Yu, and how vengeance overtook virtue for the ultimate fate of a nation.
During the assault on Fan Castle, the Wu army surrounded General Guan Yu and...
It can't be. Guan Yu. Bring me my sword at once. Everyone, begin preparing for war.
No, my lord. Our enemy is Wei. It would not be just to attack
Defeat
Wu.
Wei, and Wu will have no choice other than to surrender. Please reconsider.
None of that matters to me now. Neither of you understand my pain. I must do it. For the death of my brother. Who must pay?
I will be covering this video in 3 acts, providing deeper context to the fallout in Jing Province. I will do this by using military strategy and motivations from Sun Tzu's Art of War. For those not familiar with this book, Sun Wu, more modernly known as Sun Tzu, wrote it around the 5th century BC. Master Sun was a Chinese military general and strategist who lived during the Eastern Zhou dynasty, an era in Chinese history ridden with political turmoil and warfare many years prior to the establishment of the Three Kingdoms, or the 3 factions commonly known as Shu, Wu, and Wei in the Dynasty Warriors games. I won't go too in-depth into the history and timeline, considering Dynasty Warriors and Romance of the Three Kingdoms is fictional in terms of historical accuracy, though loosely based on the events and battles that took place. Regardless, it is believed many warlords and nations practiced and admired Master Sun's writings and tactics in warfare, but none more than Wu themselves. In an age of political turmoil, betrayal, and chaos amongst a divided land. It's important to highlight motives in warfare, since all is fair in war. The upheaval can be traced back to the bitterness Wu felt after Shebe, where Wu provided the bulk of the alliances and troops and resources in exchange for what little help Shu could offer. With the coalition defeating Wei and forcing Cao Cao's retreat, the bigger threat at the time, Wei, was on their heels, if you will. Fast forward to the rise of Shu, and the foothold they began to have on the western part of the country. Their forces were more fortified as they battled with Wei for control of the land. Liu Bei additionally bestowed Jing Province to Guan Yu, who refused to give the province back to Wu, who claims it was rightfully theirs during the early days of Sun Jian prior to the collapse of the Han Dynasty. This left a bitter taste in the mouth of Wu as they grow to despise Shu. It's important to note, Shu and Wei were beginning to grow as the greater forces amongst the three kingdoms, leaving Wu behind in the struggle for control of territories. In turn, it's easier to look at Wu as the balancing force amongst the rivaled three kingdoms. Whenever either powerhouse, whether it be Shu or Wei, got too much control, Wu would balance the weight, so no one force would be too powerful. Wu didn't have the army and force that Shu and Wei possessed at this time. In fear of letting either faction gain the upper hand, or too much, would mean a squashing of Wu in the process. With battles raging on between Cao Cao and Liu Bei, and Shu gaining ground as a force, Wu's moment of equilibrium was approaching, but they needed to be calculated in their approach. Wu had an agreement with Shu that allowed Jing to be partial in terms of control. This shallow alliance between Shu and Wu somehow fortified Guan Yu to be blinded by greed in keeping Jing no matter what. In a sense, Shu had just as much strategic interest in Jing as Wu did, but the sleeping dragon Zhuge Liang was cunning in his approaches and took advantages of a cocky Zhou Yu who thought they could outmaneuver Wei, but Zhuge Liang knew Wu could not prove victorious in their approach. In short, Guan Yu refused to even consider giving Jing back to Wu. This further heated the tensions, but as the Wei forces began to mobilize south towards Jing and the centralized provinces, the showdown at Fan Castle was beginning to take shape. With Guan Yu fixated on Wei forces, the door was beginning to open, and Wu had to act swiftly if they wanted to take Jing. The news from Fan Castle could come as a surprise to some, but for those who understand diplomacy in a land fueled by chaos, it comes as no surprise at all. To remain blinded in pursuit of Wei, Shu left the door open for Wu to take back the land they argued to have a claim for. It's in times of emotional instability, or in war terms, shock and awe, where leaders are sought to be calm and collected. When emotion surpasses logic, we show the enemy our hand and allow the irrational to become rational. Only emotion is the determining factor to life and death. The response was clear. Wu shall never be forgiven, and they shall pay for the fallout of Fan Castle. Despite Zhuge Liang and Zhou Yun's constant heat of warning, Liu Bei refused to listen. He chose to go to war first, and then seek victory. An action that doesn't prove to be catastrophic until years later. The fate of Liu Bei's decision can be justified if vengeance precedes virtue. But in a tale as old as time, logic and sound thinking in distressed situations can lead to breakthrough. It can be argued that Wu did the wrong thing in betraying Shu to help Wei, but as we discussed earlier, this isn't about alliances, it's about chaos. With Shu potentially gaining superiority, Wu took on its own role as the disruptor, keeping the balances of powers at bay by any means necessary. This Musou moment, the Fallout of Jing Province, has always resonated with me, from the emotional cutscenes leading up to Yiling, or to the Battle of Fan Castle itself. It's gripping, and it forces you to choose a side. This conflicting character of Liu Bei, leveraging his kingdom of benevolence against his own personal vendettas, is quite telling for character progression, or lack thereof. The strategic approach of the aging Lu Meng to utilize a hollow and fragile alliance eclipses the art of war, and what it means to not only understand your enemy and their motives, but to never interrupt them when they're making a mistake. The legacy of succession for the rising star Lu Xun and his response as a strategic leader after Lu Meng's death ended up allowing him to take full advantage of Liu Bei's vengeful response at Yiling. These dialogues all tie into the strategies and complexities of the battles you fight in Dynasty Warriors games, who usually just get the rap of 1 versus 1,000 or 1 versus 100 and repetitive entry lines, right? But in this Musou moment, the game amplifies the characteristics of these warriors. It takes an approach that sets the tone for a new age during the fall of the Han Dynasty, or in this instance, the chaos that ensued after. I greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this take on this one Musou moment. I went over a lot of details in this video, encompassing a lot of different events throughout the battles and alliances that took place, so please feel free to add context to anything I said in the comment section below. I love the support you all show, and this is a trend I would love to see other creators take on for Musou May. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.